Welcome to Inside the Firm, a podcast dedicated to small business owners and hosted by entrepreneurs, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. Each week, they take you on their journey of how to start, run, and grow a business by bringing you inside their architecture and real estate development firm. Get a behind-the-scenes tour of how these business leaders manage their clients and foster company culture while creating new and innovative projects. And now your hosts, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko.
Hey everybody, if you are trying to learn Revit, I think you should learn from yours truly, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. We have a website called RevitRocketship.com. We've been training university students, other professionals, our own staff for many, many, many years, and we made it available online at RevitRocketship.com. And what's great about it is that it's broken down into 5 to 7 minute chunks, plus or minus on some of them. Teaches you everything from families to a whole project base. And one of the differentiators, I think, there's actually two major ones. One is we're an actual firm, F9productions.com, that does a lot of work. So we are implementing practices that are true. And what that means is that we're modeling like it gets built. We're doing our walls a little bit different. You'll see in the videos of why we do it, but it actually works out in the end to create a better model. We've trained a lot of people, so this is not our first go around. And the other thing too is that you get our template. You get the actual template that we use, hone, develop, and improve every year in that system. So it's for free. So if you were starting a residential project, you'd start off on that. It'd have everything set up the way that we like, the way that helps you go faster, build cooler things, and be more awesome. So check that out, RevitRocketship.com.
Welcome to another special episode of Inside the Firm. I'm here at the AIA 2019 conference in Las Vegas, and I'm here with a very special guest, Earl Parson. Earl Parson is an entrepreneur and architect out of Prescott, Arizona, where he designs award-winning custom homes through his firm Parson Architecture. Earl won honorable mention in the 2016 Charette Venture Group Business Plan Competition for CleverModerns.com. His online platform providing plans, resources, and support for people who want to build Quonset hut homes. His Facebook community, DIY Quonset Dwellers, has over 1,200 members and is the largest online community for Quonset hut enthusiasts in the world, I believe. Is that right, Earl?
In the world.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show today. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Lance. Really happy to be here.
So you and I found each other on Facebook through the Entre Architect community. We're always laughing and reacting on Facebook, and I love your work. I love that you live in Arizona. Tell me, and I know you moved from California. Tell me about the decision to move from California to Arizona, and then go into this whole Quonset thing. I mean, it's just like you're doing some of the coolest work, I think.
Thank you, Lance.
In the nation with these Quonsets.
Well, that's very kind words, and so it's been kind of a crazy story, and it goes back a few years. I mean, I remember, standing in my kitchen, I would listen to Mark LePage. So a huge shout out to Mark and the Entre Architect community, and on his podcast. And he would always end, and I'm an entrepreneur architect. And I always just felt like I was an architect. But I didn't.
Because you worked for somebody at that point, right?
Well, I was on my own. So I was on my own since the recession.
Yeah.
2009, the firm I was with closed up shop, and I just decided I was not going to go back. And so I was on my own. It was hard, in those years, as we all know, that went through that as professionals. Yep. And I didn't want to go back, and there were those years of doing what you could do to keep it together and keep the mortgage on the house and fill the house with roommates and take any kind of work. And, but I also use that time to explore my creative side. And I've ever since I was in architecture school at SciArc, I learned to weld, and I loved welding, and I just had more time to, my welding and making was kind of the soothing thing that got me through the, exploring that creative side when there wasn't a lot to do design-wise for clients.
What kind of work? Describe your first clients. Were they? How did you get them? And
so I think what the trend of clients in my career that pulled me out of the recession started with getting a bunch of my furniture in a show in downtown LA. There's a little gallery in Chinatown called Fifth Floor Gallery. Some friends had some work. They were putting together a show there, and they suggested that I, talk to the guy, and I brought him over to my studio and showed him some things, and we talked. And so that show was, I didn't sell a lot of work and stuff, but it was a boost. It was a spiritual boost, a psychological lift to have something creative out there with someone interested in it.
Yeah.
When there was just nothing going on.
Right. And
that led to a client who was a woman I'm still friends with, and she turned into a good friend to go out with for sushi on Friday nights, kind of a friend, and she had a home that was she was at the end of a remodel, and for reasons I don't need to go into that long story, she just needed some railings on the front of her hillside home to be able to pass final inspection on a house that was built a long time ago with like stone steps up to the front door way up high, and there were no railings.
Yeah.
So I designed and built some beautiful stainless steel railings for her on the front of her house, and then it was really not a huge job, but it was it was in the wheelhouse of the fabrication work I was doing at the time. And then that led to another client with a friend of hers, and it was the three of us. The sort of three of us going out for sushi on Fridays. It's just like this thing I look back so fondly on now, and it was like this community of friends, but also they were my clients, and we sort of interacted on both levels in this really wonderful way. And so that was kind of in my background, and I would be hearing, years later, several years later, I guess, I was listening to podcasts about technology and online business and scaling your business in an online way that, it's not really the way architects operate.
At all.
It's like a totally different kind of...
We don't advertise.
Yeah.
The online thing, that was one thing that I picked up on right away was, oh my God, nobody in Colorado, architect-wise, is really utilizing the internet to gain their business. It was just like, and I was like, don't tell anybody. We're gonna that's gonna be us.
And so I was like, always in the back of my mind. And then here's Mark LePage in the other ear on his podcast saying, I'm an entrepreneur architect. And I was like, I felt like there was this huge problem I had to solve for myself of wanting to have a kind of more of a building a community as opposed to just acquiring clients, and feeling like I'm really an entrepreneur doing something in an interesting new way, not just another guy remodeling houses in Los Angeles. And it all kind of started to come together then so we're married now, but I was dating my then boyfriend, and we did a trip in late 2015 to Taliesin. We went to Phoenix and just did a kind of weekend away. Went to Taliesin.
Is that the first time you've been there, or you've been there before?
I had not been to Taliesin
Oh,
West.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd seen the buildings in pictures and all that, but to go through there and how you have this immersive experience, right? He took this scrap of desert that nobody cared about, and he created this immersive experience where he completely controlled, the entire experience for any visitors, and his clients would come there and all of that.
Even with the building, remember he would pick out the certain stones, and he'd be like, and he would point to which ones could go in, and he would call the ones that he liked goose eggs. That's a goose egg. That's a good one. Pick that and put that one in there.
So we were on that trip, and we were driving through Phoenix, and I just got the urge to it was like this. All of a sudden, I had this feeling that like I had to make this huge confession. Like, it was not a big deal, but like I had this, like, it was weighing on me, and I was kind of terrified to say it. And I said to Eric, as we're driving up Scottsdale Road or whatever, and I'm like, I really want to build a house out of a Quonset hut.
Oh my God!
I don't know.
What?
I know.
That's where it came from.
It had been brewing, for a long time inside me. And
did you grow up on a farm? I mean,
my parents were farmers in southern Indiana. My grandparents.
Okay.
My grandparents were farmers in southern Indiana.
Maybe it was
grew up in Indiana around all the kind of rural. And then I went to college in St. Louis, and which is like there's just beautiful warehouse districts, and all along the river, old kind of. I don't know. I haven't been back to St. Louis that much, but especially in the early '90s. It was probably a little grimier than it is now, even, I don't know. And, just that always inspired me. And I always loved kind of the industrial stuff, the agricultural buildings, the farm, the kind of outdoors and all of that. So when I said this to Eric, and I just expected him to laugh or roll his eyes, or I didn't know what, and he was just kind of like, because I had built it up in my mind as this like big thing. And like, he was just like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And I was just like, just done nothing conversation in a way.
Yeah.
And then later, so then after we sort of got together, emerged households, and we're now a couple and stuff, we really wanted to do something to build somewhere, and through another whole series of like strange coincidences or fortuitous events and meeting some people and stuff, we discovered this area in northern Arizona near the Grand Canyon. And I knew I met someone who had a vacation house. He was actually when I was going to move in with Eric, and I was fixing up my house in Los Angeles, which was in Highland Park at the time, and I had lived there for a long time, and it had an old craftsman house that needed a lot of work to really sell it, and so I put a lot into it to make it really beautiful. And I was adding mini split air conditioning to it. So the guy that was putting in my air conditioning, he had a vacation house in northern Arizona, and he saw some renderings of the Quonset huts on the walls in my studio at home, and he came in to ask me about something with the work he was doing, and then he was like, "Hey, those are really cool," and we started chatting about that. And so I told Eric, yeah, this guy's got this vacation rental in northern Arizona near the Grand Canyon, and he was saying how like it's a great market for vacationers, people that. So, and he has this whole like formula, like people that are visiting a national park, a family that's going to go visit a national park that's planning their vacation well ahead and paying for everything in advance on VRBO or Airbnb, are great visitors. They're very respectful people. They're kind to your property. They're not hard on it. They don't trash stuff. They're not partiers. And he has a great vacation rental business there. And so I told Eric, and I was like, maybe this is what let's think. And Eric was super excited about it.
Yeah. Which you didn't expect, right?
I wasn't as surprised there, but he really got excited about it. Yeah. And then I found him looking at land on Zillow without me even knowing he was that excited about it. I'm like, what are you doing? Busted. What is this?
Yeah.
And so then we found this 10 acres, and it's like this beautiful 10 acres, and started building Quonset huts. And so then that just transformed my practice. But meanwhile, I had been thinking about the Quonset huts, thinking about DIY home building, like thinking there's a whole kind of unserved swath of people that would love beautiful architecture, but they're not really at the level of would hire an architect for full services to design something really beautiful. And they're probably going to build it themselves. People that are like, there's a growing DIY movement in all things, and I think a lot of it's fueled by YouTube these days, fueled by accessibility of technology with things like 3D printing. Like the makers of the world are rising up and making amazing things because there's all this ability to tap into stuff that used to be really exotic and specialized and expensive. And so I initially conceived of, trying to build a community around empowering and supporting DIY home builders. And the idea of the Quonset hut house was kind of one of a few different strategies I had in mind when I put together this business plan around a kind of online business supporting and empowering DIY home building. And that was Clever Moderns. And that was when I got the recognition by the Charette Venture Group team in the business plan competition that year.
How did you find out about those? Was it through the Entree Architect community?
Through the Entree Architect people, yeah.
Yeah.
Through Mark. Basically, Mark would have Todd Redding on his podcast and stuff, and so I entered. I registered for the 2015 competition.
Yep.
And I hadn't really formulated my ideas. I just kind of thought, like, well, I should be doing a business plan. Mark says you should do a business plan. I should do a business plan. But, like, I didn't really do it. And I didn't enter anything. And then it was really weighing on me, like, what is my idea here? And then I basically spent most of 2015, like, I would sit down and write out my ideas. I would sit down every morning and spend time with my coffee quietly at clear off a space on my desk that was not in front of the computer, that was not, for drafting or doing work stuff. It was like my quiet thinking place.
Yeah.
And I would just sit down with my coffee and be groggy and, I'd feed the dogs and just sit there and write.
What time do you wake up every morning? What time were you waking up for that? 5?
Probably 6.
Yeah. There's something really, when you wake up in those that's when I'm most creative, that's when I'm most productive. And people on this podcast who are listening and avid listeners, they've heard that over and over again. But it's so critical, and I just want to highlight this part because there's something spiritual about it. There's something sitting there in the quiet, nobody's bugging you, and there's something about if you can do it, writers, a lot of famous writers have talked about this, is they want to be writing within the first couple minutes of when they wake up because their brain, your brain is just starting to function.
And I would refuse to look at email or anything, like nothing with the phone at all before you try and sit down and have that time
you were
for
analog.
yourself.
It was a pure analog experience.
Right. I mean, and then as I started developing the ideas even more, I got out old drawing sets from old projects that were obsolete and, didn't matter anymore. And I unstapled them and rolled them out flat, upside down. And I got, like, the multi-pack of colored Sharpie pens in the thick and the thin. So I had, like, all the colors in thick and thin. Mm-hmm. And I had Post-it notes. And I would just, like, draw and diagram and, like, write out a title for the page in big block letters in color, and then just kind of meditatively shade it in, and just like and that's how I built my ideas for Clever Moderns. And at that point, I didn't know it was going to turn into like this crazy Quonset hut thing that would take off just by that small part of the idea would really run with its own thing. And so we started building the Quonset huts in northern Arizona placed the order for we bought the land in late 2016. Placed the order for the huts in the late 2016. Started building. I think we took delivery of the buildings in like March. Poured concrete in May. And built in 2017. So
you are building them yourselves.
We're
right?
building them ourselves. And it was like amazingly fun because for 2017, Eric went down to 3 days a week at his work. And he would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday through Tuesday, we would be at our property working, driving 8 hours across the Mojave Desert from Los Angeles to Arizona. And then Tuesday, we would drive back. Sometimes we would drive back on Monday, so we'd have an extra buffer before he had to go back to work.
Yeah.
But basically... And then he would work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then he would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then we would go to Arizona and have our long weekend there. And so we did that for the majority of 2017. Got our first two buildings more or less built, not totally final.
And the first two were your house, right, and a guest house?
Well, so they're permitted as like outbuildings.
Okay.
And zoning allows us a residence and an ADU or a house and a guest house on the acreage. And so these two are not really a house. I mean, we kind of use the one as our apartment when we're, up there, and it has a half bath in it, and we put an outdoor shower, and we just can, it's set up as our apartment and workspace. And then the other building is our kind of workshop with a hangar door that we built on the front and stuff like that. So we're trying to kind of trick them out, in interesting ways.
Yeah.
And so and now we're building the first actual house on the property.
And that will be your house, yes?
Well, that will be a vacation rental.
That will be the vacation, okay.
For the Grand Canyon. We're not going to really probably live on the property full time.
Yeah.
But so after driving back and forth with all this like time on the road and difficulty getting to the property. And there were a couple of times that I forget what it would have been for, but like I had to basically drive over and do one thing and have a quick turnaround and drive straight back to LA.
Oh my
I mean, and it was like nuts, and like that happened once or twice. Like not an emergency situation, but there was, I forget, something that had to happen that was on a job site when it's your thing.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to just go drop everything and go do the thing.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And so by the end of the year, it was starting to also coincide with Eric being 20 years at his work and being ready to kind of retire from that, but not retire from working really, but just like be done with that and take his retirement there and shift gears. And my work was, portable and now really becoming very Quonset hut focused. And we wanted to be able to spend more time easily, at our property.
Let's back up a little bit because I think there's two things that I missed from the story. And that is, so did you submit your business plan before you built the two structures? Or was
because the business plan... The business plan competition was happening in the beginning of 2016, leading up to the 2016 AIA convention in Philadelphia. So that was the submittals and things for the competition were due in like February or January or February, and then they had the short list, and I made the short list, and then you kind of presented the way it was formatted a little differently than from how they are doing it now, but we then, at the AIA convention, not as part of the convention, but in Philadelphia, around the convention and stuff, I presented my pitch to the jury with my slide deck and stuff, and my business plan.
And then how did you? And
so that was in the beginning of 2016.
Yeah.
And then we didn't buy our land in Arizona until like October of that year.
What about so you have this online community, right? It's a Facebook group of 1,200 people.
Right.
When did that start? And how did you get it off the ground?
I looked back there. So in about March of 2017, when we were about to start actual construction on our huts, I started my Facebook group. So that was... I just started a group and set it up, and I asked all the friends and family that I thought would be willing to just help populate the group. And people were happy to do it, and so I got some people in the group. Mm-hmm. And then I just would share our own build and share articles and share content, in the group. And it was pretty slow for a while.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people that, people will find my website and email me, or people will reach out to me. I have some stuff on YouTube, and people will, I'm always like promoting the group and stuff, and it grew really slowly, and then it just started to get traction, and now it's crazy. I mean, it's been a while now that Facebook actually, people say they learned about the group because like a sidebar ad or a suggestion from Facebook, but I don't pay for that. I don't ask for that. Facebook is just promotes groups.
It suggests,
they just suggest groups. So Facebook is like suggesting my group now, and it's growing, and it's we reached. So I just found an old post that resurfaced in the group where a year ago it had hit 500.
Cool.
When the group was about a year old, it hit about 500, and so now at about 2 years and plus, it's about 1,200, and I think it's growing at about 75 to 100 people a month right now.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Do you have are people all over the world looking at this now? Like,
I've actually got an email the other day from a guy in some village in the north of England, and they have an old. Okay, so there is another term for it, which is a Nissen hut, Nissen, and Nissen was a British engineer who invented the kind of proto Quonset hut back in around the World War I period. Mm-hmm. The actual Quonset hut was developed in the U.S. at Quonset Point Naval Base in Rhode Island, right on the cusp of World War II. But the Nissen hut in England had like a wooden frame, was arch-shaped, and was clad with corrugated metal on the outside. Then when they did the kind of military version here, it was a metal frame, and there were kind of some improvements, I think, to the design, and it was more industrialized and stuff then. So this guy was emailing me, and he said he was looking for resources in England for Quonset huts because they had an old Nissen hut that was their village hall, and they wanted to replace. It was really at the end of its useful life, and they wanted to replace it with a modern Quonset hut because they loved the shape and whatever, and they just wanted, and did I have any? And like I said, I emailed him back, and now I have this friend in the north of England,
awesome.
and
Cool.
I want to go help them build their Quonset hut, but I don't know if that'll happen.
So speaking of that, like going and helping and stuff.
Yeah.
So how is it translated monetarily? So I know you have their website, Clever Mod. So
right.
And then how does that? Have you sold plans? I mean, you just kind of have
okay.
stock
So I have
plans?
not sold plans yet. I have free plans.
Oh, okay.
And the free plans are like equivalent to like a schematic design level of a thing, and they're a little bit diagrammatic, but they give someone an idea of like with the round shape, how much overhead clearance do you get, and some design ideas and stuff like that. And so I have 2 different plans right now. I'm trying to get a third one on there, and I'd like to have eventually a much larger library of free plans, and then the plans for sale. But the free plans page is my most visited page on my website. Mm-hmm. And Steelmaster USA is one of the major manufacturers and sellers of Quonset huts. And I have a good relationship with them, and they featured me on their blog. I get website traffic from them a lot. They're pretty active on social media and stuff themselves, and so they're kind of friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not selling product yet on my website. I'm moving closer to that direction, and I'm also my first monetizing, if you will actually be a kind of startup guide for someone that wants to do a Quonset hut project, and so it'll be pretty comprehensive, like things to look out for, things to think about, things you didn't know about. It'll have a kind of section of like technical things about the Quonset huts, how they go together, what to expect when you're building your hut.
And will the online version of this will be an online thing you can unlock, or
it'll probably be like a PDF type product.
Okay.
I would like to then, and so I'll sell that at a price that will, be probably under $100, mm-hmm. and then with that I will also offer a discount with an individual consultation with me. So if somebody, if somebody pays for the thing and downloads the guide and then goes through it, and then they want to sort of have an hour of my time, then they would get a break as a kind of enticement to, actually pull the trigger on the consult.
Has anybody hired you just outright to do a custom one yet?
Oh yeah, so I've gotten a lot of clients this way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Talk about that.
So,
how that's
yeah, I mean, so. People, so between YouTube and finding me on my blog, and then and so again, and I really I'm citing the statistics and stuff and being like transparent about this because I feel like anyone could do this. If you're an architect out there trying to get your foot in the door in some way, or you've got an idea, if you niche down and get something that's specific enough that can attract an audience based on that, mm-hmm. you can start from zero and grow a thing.
Yes.
I'm proof of this.
Yes, you are. Uh-huh.
And so my website, the Clever Moderns website, was like a fledgling, like scrap together a thing so that when you're in front of Charette Venture Group talking about your thing and you send them to your website, there's a thing there.
Yeah.
So that would have been in like the beginning of 2016, and I'm getting over 1,000 website visits a month.
Yeah,
at this
great.
point, according to my Google Analytics.
Uh-huh.
And I would, again, like 5 years ago, if you had told me like I'll have a website with over 1,000 visitors a month and growing and all of that, I might have thought, I mean, it's possible, but you're kind of crazy to think that that'll happen.
Yeah, sure.
And it's happening.
Yeah.
So people all over have found me. I'm licensed in several states, and I've got one under construction in Florida, another one that's going to be in permitting soon in Florida, and a recent. And now this is a great. I've got about four or five on the boards right now, but I just had my first inquiry that went this way. It was a person reaching out to me locally in our town in Arizona. Prescott is up in the mountains, so it's, a lot of people from Phoenix, Tucson, southern Arizona, where it's extremely hot, come up to Prescott in the summer
Cool off.
to cool off.
Yep.
Exactly. Or even all the way up to Williams.
Sure.
Like northern Arizona up high altitude is where they all come to, people come to get away. And then the funny thing is there's also people from like Alaska. This is actually a thing. Come to northern Arizona in the winter, and like we get snow, and from California it seems crazy, but compared to Alaska, it's like great weather to be in northern Arizona with only a little bit of snow in the winter. But anyway, these folks reach out to me because they've got an acre lot out in the woods in the Ponderosa Pine Forest outside of Prescott, up in the hills. And they want to build a little place to get away to, and then eventually to retire to. And so he initially emailed me. I guess he found my website because I'm local, and he sent me an image. I mean, a lot of architects probably get this. Somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, I want to build a house. I want to do a thing. Here's kind of a picture I found of something I sort of like." And it was a kind of cabiny 2-car garage with a pitched roof and wood trim and not an unpleasant looking thing, but nothing exciting or special. And we were talking on the phone to talk about his project and see if it seemed like a good fit for a meeting or whatever. Brief phone call. And then he says, "Well, and then I sent you that picture." I'm like, "Yeah, it seems like we can do something." And he says, "And then we were looking at your website, and then we saw the Quonset huts."
All right.
And so he mentioned it to his wife, and at first she thought, "But is it going to just look like a weird-looking shed?" And then she saw the pictures too. And now they, because I'm making beautiful modern architecture,
absolutely,
with a round prefabricated shell, of a roof.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this could be my first, like, what I will call a crossover client.
Nice. Yeah. I would say so.
So we have an appointment scheduled in a couple weeks when they're going to be up looking at their property, and I'll go out on a Friday and look at their land and shake and howdy, and So that would be a pretty exciting first there.
Yeah.
And so it's just and one thing I've is a common theme in this world of online business and starting a business seems to be, and I know you're an advocate of diversifying your work, and I think that's a good strategy. Mm-hmm. And I've certainly been, the firm that I was with that went under in the recession had a big housing portfolio. Beautiful multi-story housing, and like that was one of the hardest hit parts of the sector, and so diversifying is obviously important. Now, I think if you're starting your business from scratch and you're trying to get traction, I think yes, you should. If it feels appropriate to take all the work that comes your way, absolutely do that. I also think it's easier to get noticed by far if you can find a really deep niche to serve that it's easier to show up on Google. It's easier to provide content that no one else has. And I also think, though, there are a lot of... There's also something to be said for just doing things your way and being unique enough to stand out. Now, it can be hard to do as an architect, but you don't always have to. I guess I'll say it this way also to try and make a clear, coherent thought here. I'm kind of starting to ramble, but
what I would say is, there's two things here. There's two things. One, I think you're right about if you can drill down to some kind of niche like that. And the parallel here is when we built our first tiny house, it all came from eerily something very similar to yours of like, okay, we got to get this website up. And we didn't expect it to take off. The way we got into tiny houses was we were driving back from Boulder. We were celebrating the duplex. It was the very first large commission that Alex and I got. And we called our friend Blake, and he hated his job, and we asked him how much, we said, well, how much money you got? Quit. And he said, $25,000. We were like, well, build a tiny house, drive around the nation. And he goes, okay. And then he thought we were joking, so we bought the domain name, blakestinyhouse.com. And the next morning we emailed him and said, we guess you're doing it. And we sort of just went into that, and the organic hits and reach that we got were something that we could have never predicted either. And so if you can find a hot spot like that, even if it's on a whim, kind of like what I did and you did in your conversation, go for it. And then you talk about like being able to Googling, like just the search engines finding this certain thing like Quonset home or tiny house, and it was there. The electricity was there, and we soon became this very, very popular website. And all of a sudden, we had TV producers calling us. It had eventually landed us on HGTV.
So you can grow outward from a niche probably easier than you can just launch yourself as a, hey, I will do anything.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep. And so don't be, I think, so you can go the other way, but I think you're right with the niche thing. And then it landed like with us. Then we did 2 more for Subaru, and then now we're building this big development. So it all works out in the end, I think. And the other component I would put it into is like when you told me this story today, I could see happiness on your face. So you got to be passionate and happy about that niche, and then go for it, because like, and you've told me before too, I think just in a private Facebook message, like, this is the happiest I've ever been. We love it out here in Arizona. Like, it was one of the best moves we ever made. So where are you at right now with the house project? What stage? So
we are almost completely enclosed. And this house is also, leave it to an architect building his own house to just continually complicate, change, expand. Like, I don't know. It's a common occurrence around our house for the morning coffee chit chat in the living room to start off with one of the other of us saying, "I have a crazy idea," and then we kind of both brace ourselves and see what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Because the Quonset. It's actually a Quonset hut set up on ICF concrete walls.
Okay.
So that's been a great experience. I think we're not going to probably do another one like that, just because it did add a lot of complexity to the project. And I think you can do a beautiful Quonset hut house that doesn't necessarily have to be set up on 8-foot high ICF walls with But I mean, we're thrilled with how it's going. So we just poured our final exterior concrete work. At the slabs around the doors and porches. All the arches are finally on the actual Quonset hut. If you want to see the latest kind of ongoing, is my Instagram is Quonset House. So if you look on Instagram at Quonset House, that's my Instagram for this, where I share all of my Quonset stuff. But it's a little more up to date than my blog. But the Clever Moderns blog has a lot of pictures too for the listeners. So we have about half or 2/3 of the windows are installed. The arched windows that go in the end of the Quonset hut were held up at the factory because I guess the complexity of fabricating the arches. So there's one piece of curved trim that we're still waiting on for the windows to go in, and then we have a big window wall that's 20 feet tall at the end of the arch that looks out, and we have like this beautiful view out to the mountains.
Yeah.
So as soon as those go on, then we have an enclosed thing. But we're going to go ahead and start ourselves roughing in the electrical and plumbing next, and that's kind of the stage that we're at. So we have rough framing in. We'll be our next steps there will be, we have actually bolts in the roof to tighten. So with a Quonset hut, you bolt it all up loose. You tighten the bolts finger tight. So the thing is, it's not like Lego. The metal panels that make up the roof, they're 10-foot panels, and they don't just magically snap together. They are like sheet metal.
Do they come flat and then you?
No,
curve it?
they're bent to shape in the factory, but they're not. You have to kind of pull them into place, and you use like drift pins, or we got these like aluminum really big tent stakes on Amazon that you like put through the holes and pull. You draw them together and then bolt them up. But you're supposed to. The manufacturers say leave every other bolt out on your first pass. We put in more than that, but but you cannot tighten them to spec on the first pass. So it's a bolt and a nut, and on the outside of the bolt there's a polyethylene washer that gets smashed. It's a very dense plastic washer. So when you tighten it to spec, that washer smashes in really flat against the metal and seals. So we have to go back over and tighten the bolts. So we got a rope ladder, and I got a safety harness, and we tie it off to my pickup truck, which is not to OSHA spec, but it doesn't matter. And I go up on the roof, and Eric comes on the scaffolding underneath, and we go through and tighten all the bolts. So that'll be one of our next tasks. It's fun. And then like when my sister and her teenagers, or like Eric's nephew was just out, and like you have family out there with you on the acreage, like, and you go to the Grand Canyon for a break in the action and and like family helping out, friends come and help us out. It's just been a fun, we've made friends. We've had strangers from Instagram that are now close friends.
Oh my God.
Who have volunteered to come help.
No kidding.
So we've had volunteer labor with people that just wanted to come learn how to build a Quonset hut.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
been amazing.
That's cool.
And then friends of friends that are driving through the area that want to see it, and so they come by, and now we have these. I don't know. We have friends also that are big in the kind of like Airstream community. They live in an Airstream and work online and stuff.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah. So we have good friends who go back to our time in California.
What happens after this house is done then?
All right. So after this, then we'll build the next one. So and
that'll be the ADU, right? Because this one will be the primary.
So this one was going to be the ADU.
Okay.
And we kept it at just 1,000 square feet because that's the maximum ADU size in our area. And that was going to mean the next one had to be twice that size for the zoning. And this house has become so special to us. And it's kind of, it's big enough for just an undertaking for the two of us that we really are not, we don't really think we want to do a bigger one next. We want to scale it back down a little bit.
So this next one would have to be 500.
So the next one will be the ADU for this.
Yeah.
And it can go, well, then we ended up making the loft a little bit larger when we decided that. So now I think we can probably, and I also made some other changes. So when the inspector hasn't seen it since we kind of did some things on the fly, and if he has us resubmit the plans, I'm going to try and recalc the area and sort of boost it a little, on the math.
Yeah.
And then we can probably get our ADU up to about 600 square feet. It'll be about 500 or 600 square feet.
Yeah.
It'll be more like the headquarters hut that we started
and
with.
I saw you post the other day. You there's another piece of land. Is that real?
Okay, so that's real. We haven't. It's not going on my blog or on the stuff yet. But so there's another chunk.
Very cool.
So there will be more Quonsets.
Very cool.
In our future, and so then it's sort of like, it's a version of architect as developer.
Exactly.
So it's a vacation rental strategy for us. We're not going to live there full time. We're going to have it as and I think. And there's there's Airbnb and VRBO are the two main big ones for that. But like there's websites that just specialize in architectural vacation rental. And I think a kind of Quonset hut architectural vacation rental thing for us up there, it'll be a good business, moving forward. For us as well.
Well, I applaud the whole journey, and thank you for sharing it with me today and everybody else.
I'm very happy to share.
I think it's cool. I think people need to hear these kind of stories, especially when they kind of bloom from this place that you wouldn't expect. Because to me, that's really where the beautiful stuff happens, and then it's a passion the whole way through, and you're just loving life. You guys are having fun building. You're going to make some money. You're getting clients out of it. You almost won an award. You got, you went that far. It's totally cool. So with that, I'd like to switch gears and just ask you some final questions.
Great.
I've been asking everybody this. You're an architect, so there's these are. I want to hear from everybody about what they think, where we're headed and everything. And you're a thinker. Yeah. You're a thinker. You're an intellectual. So, number one, with the exponential growth of technology we've seen in the last century, it seems that automation is inevitable. Are you at all worried that we could lose our profession to automation?
I don't know that I would say lose the profession. There are a lot of changes coming.
A lot of changes.
I think that I'm not one to say what I think they are. I don't have a list of these are all the changes that are coming or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think things are going to become more things like the.
Well, how about your blog and the way that Eric automated?
Okay, Eric automated my blog,
and that's helpful for you.
It is helpful for me. Losing. And actually, though, I was on the verge. So I have a part-time assistant, and she does some drafting for me, and she does some other things as well. She does some admin on my Facebook group and stuff like that for me. She lives in Atlanta. She's remote, and I was starting to have some conversations with her about setting up images for my blog for me and watermarking them and resizing them and stuff to be able to to be able to get them on the blog. And Eric heard the conversation. Now, he's a software engineer and an electrical engineer with a lot of background in image processing, and he can write Python script with one hand tied behind his back and whatever. Right? Which that is all totally Greek to me. I have no idea. I can't do that stuff. I tried to learn Python once, and I got so frustrated. So, he wrote a script for me that basically I put a bunch of images in a folder and I number them to appear in the order that I want them in the blog post. And they can be any size or any, whatever. And then I just, up on the top bar of my screen, I type in blog it, and blog it takes over, and it takes all the images and uniformly redoes the file size. It watermarks them, and his script actually searches the four corners of the image for like the least visually contrasty, busy corner.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it optimizes which corner of the image to watermark based on like how busy and whatever the image is. He has like a way of doing that.
Yeah.
And then it watermarks them, saves all the original files in a separate folder. Then it logs into my WordPress for me, creates a blog post, and if I correctly format the name of the folder that all the images were in to begin with, it grabs the folder like name and titles the blog post correctly. And then it drops all the images in, and it puts the footer in that has a sign up for my email list. And I had this system already in place with MailChimp where when somebody signs up on my blog, I can tell which blog post or page they signed up from.
Yep.
And so his script automatically correctly tags that in the footer for me as well. And it does all of that with like I type one word. So like that just took some work away from Melissa that was going to be like a couple of hours of her time or an hour.
Yeah.
To put all that together and upload it into the thing for me and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just a very minor, like, at-home DIY with some code, not a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal and I wouldn't know how to do that. But yeah, so, I mean, that's an example. There's changes coming. But, will there be a point that no human beings are involved in construction anymore? I mean, probably not.
Probably not. Although have you seen those there's robots in Japan they're developing that can hang drywall, and I thought, yeah, who wants to hang drywall? See, that's the way I think about it. I go, think about all these menial tasks on the job site where like, okay, you hang the drywall. How hard is it? Like is anybody getting fulfilled as a person, screwing the rest of it off? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe if they're listening to a podcast.
There are dislocations in the economy. It sucks for people to lose their job, and that will happen.
Yeah.
At the same time, in the macro big picture, the people that were displaced historically. There's nobody. I mean, blacksmithing was a huge field at one time. I mean, now there's like hobbyist blacksmiths, and I mean, I love following those guys on Instagram and women that make like amazing hand forged beautiful work that like you wouldn't even imagine this was a handmade forged thing, and like, intricate and beautiful and complex stuff. So like it's become a hobby, and I can't imagine that people. I think if there's human beings, there are going to be human beings that want to engage their creativity and make beautiful things and do that. Will there be, trades doing their job as a necessity for construction to happen when it's going on at scale and cost is an issue. Well, a lot of those jobs will be eliminated, and and I don't know the answers. I mean, and some people that are really, some people that are really into like the future of AI and all of that think that like, well, humans are going to be totally displaced by the robots, and there won't be any jobs left at all for anyone at all.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, that seems a little hard to believe when the entire history of jobs being replaced has meant new things springing up for people to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always been that people were just freed up from doing other more menial things and now able to do other more like meaningful things.
Yeah. That's where I'm at with it too.
So I have a hard time believing that this is somehow an exception to that rule. Right. That now we're finally at the point where nope, that's it. No more. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me in that way.
We all become Wall-E people. And we're just fed with the tube. I don't think so. All right. Next question. 3D printing was expected to transform architecture and construction, but uptake of it has been slow. Once the technology has been adopted, how do you see architects adopting it? And will it usher back in the architect as the master builder?
I think it could. The architect as the master builder is only going to happen because architects like you and me are interested in being a master builder.
Being a master builder, yeah. Because even if they have the accessibility, of getting the machine and buying the machine, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it, right?
I don't think that will usher it in.
Yeah.
It's not like that's going to be the thing that will suddenly be like, oh, now all the architects are going to want to do that. I mean, and it's such a big profession. Some architects are historians, some are theorists, some are writers, and some are builders and makers, and some are, really interested in some arcane narrow part of like building envelope science, and like we need those people to be fascinated and obsessed with their small little piece of the bigger picture, because that's how the science and technology is advanced, because someone is so obsessed with perfecting that one thing that now it suddenly gets perfected, and if nobody cared that much it wouldn't be. Right? So I think for the architects that want to take that on and like leverage the technology to do even greater things, it's going to be an amazing time.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to. I wanted to just empower those who want to use it to empower their designs. Right? Yeah. Last question, and we already talked about the Great Recession, so it's a perfect one to wrap up on. And that's where you and I kind of started what we're doing. I mean, we're just kind of born out of it, and we've come to this great place. So it's been 10 years since the Great Recession,
right?
And it seems like we are due for another one. What is one piece of advice you would give to a small firm architect or business owner as we near the end of this business cycle?
Well, I feel like I'm getting closer to launching some more of like information products and making them available for sale to the community that I've spent the last 2-3 years building. And I think strengthening your ties in your community is a really important aspect of, being able to weather a recession. I mean, I had close friends and other, I had roommates renting my house with me to keep the mortgage, and we were all friends, and it was cool, and it worked, but that was an example of like having my community be part of getting through the recession. And I mean, there's lots of different angles you can take on, saving money, diversifying your client base and your work life and all these things. But I think, I'm looking at being able to have, information products and passive income stream, being able to be part of my income stream, that hopefully when, the next recession hits, there will be, even if that dips, it's another thing. And it's, I think also positioning myself in this kind of like adjacent to the DIY scene, I think is something that I don't think it may not be entirely recession proof, but I know that like in the last recession, a lot more people fixed up their car than bought a new car.
Yep.
And, if there's a thing there with, I mean, all the architects aren't going to be interested in that or can like do that. But I think then if I step back from that, I think just looking at what are your community ties and and whether it's professionally like you and I getting together today or whether it's with your client base or in your community where you live and being involved and
Your answer was 100% unique, and I love it. And I would echo that.
You're super involved in your community.
Absolutely, I'm a community builder, man.
Yeah,
you are. I'm literally here to build a community. I run a community garden. I do a lot of
which is a whole nother topic, by the way, that we need to like over a beer or something.
Oh yeah, definitely, because I know
garden.
you're a gardener. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for that answer. I think it's so unique, and people should take that to heart because you should get out there and be involved with your community because you never know what kind of connection can help you through a tough time. Like you said, like you palled up and you saved the mortgage. Then because you did that, and then you were able to fix up your house, sell it for a profit, and now you're out in Arizona doing really cool stuff. So thank you so much for telling your story today, Earl. We just did an hour. We were going to do maybe 20 minutes, so this is
this is really fun.
Yeah,
and I'm a fan of the podcast. I feel like you guys are just out there just slugging it out and doing this work that's interesting. And if I had a partner in my work that was, an architect, I mean, Eric and I are partners in what we're doing, but like, I think you guys are such a great example of, the way you just bounce the ideas around, the way you just are out there going after it. Really admire what you two are up to.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for being on. Thanks for the compliments.
Absolutely.
And, good luck with everything you're doing.
And now, a word from one of our sponsors.
If you work with specifications in your firm, you've probably come across outdated manufacturer specs and confusing notes. Not only does that happen, that also happens with code books too. And I'm ashamed to say it, but sometimes you're just researching a code online and then you're like, oh, is this 2012, 2015, 2009, 2006? Am I in a county? Do they even have rules? So you don't know if they applied. The same thing can be true for your specs. So, you don't want to find products that no longer exist or even companies that no longer exist. And trust me, I have done both. Maybe you even pay for specifications. Well, don't do that because there's a better way to find manufacturer specs for your products and documentations, and that's ArtCat. ArtCat.com is a free library. It has over 1,400 up-to-date, accurate specifications. Up-to-date and accurate are the keywords. They're written by FCSI, CCS, AIA professionals based on manufacturer data. ArtCat uses powerful search engines to find the right specifications for your products and downloads them in multiple formats for free. You don't even have to register. Look at that. Easy, convenient. Go to artcat.com and get the information you need. That's it.